You're listening to Days of Our Lives, a show about people playing video games. I'm your host, Sean Clauser, and show music has been provided by Stephen O'Brien. On today's episode, Valiant Hearts, The Great War. The year is 1915 and we're in the midst of World War I. I'm playing as Freddy, and he's an American that volunteered to fight alongside the French Foreign Legion. Freddy is part of a small outfit composed of British and Indian troops. He's tasked with destroying a turret gun that is preventing the Allies from advancing. We'd have to rush towards the machine gun while it fired down at us, and the only way to stay safe was to hide behind these small, makeshift metal barriers, and only advance when the turret gun had to reload. Did I mention that it was raining? It was also very muddy. So here I am as Freddy, hiding behind these tiny metal plates and rubble, and there's machine gun fire landing all around. Tons of my fellow soldiers are getting shot and falling to the ground. There's literally nothing I can do except wait. As soon as the turret gun has to reload, I would crash through the barrier and run through the mud to the next safe spot. Eventually, we made it close enough to where we were directly below the turret and it could no longer target us. Waiting there were men from the Indian Division, and they had dug a passage that led underneath the turret. I rushed through the tunnel and came across a crazy demolitions expert that was hanging from a metal platform. There were wires everywhere, and he needed me to help place the dynamite. The only problem was I couldn't understand a word he was saying. I threw up some dynamite, and he discarded it to the side and shook his fist in anger. Apparently, I didn't give him what he wanted. Although I couldn't make out his words, we found common ground for communication through hand signals. He held up 2 fingers, so I searched for a bundle of dynamite that only had a couple sticks of TNT strapped together. I gave it to him, and he attached the explosives to the ceiling, resting underneath the gun turret. The crazy Dynamite Man held up 3 fingers. I had to then move the metal platform he was on to the attachment site with 3 wires, and I searched for a bundle that had 3 sticks bound together. I lobbed it up to him, and he again attached the explosives to the ceiling and eagerly climbed down to safety. We hit the detonator and kaboom! We disabled the gun turret, allowing our forces to safely move forward. Valiant Hearts was developed by Ubisoft Montpellier. They are responsible for creating some great titles such as Rayman, Beyond Good and Evil, and Zombie U. They also made Peter Jackson's King Kong the official game of the movie. Valiant Hearts released in 2014 and is available on just about every platform. I played Valiant Hearts when it launched on the PS4. It was one of those games where I had a hard time walking away. The first night I got about halfway through, and I'm pretty sure I went to bed thinking about the game. There were a few reasons I think the game grabbed me the way it did. First of all, the game is beautiful. It has a very cartoony aesthetic, and its animations are superb. I remember being a young kid growing up playing all these video games, and I always wanted them to achieve this cartoon-like fidelity where I felt like I was actually playing a cartoon. I feel like this game achieves that. And although the game centers around the events of World War I, the story is very much about the hardships faced by the characters during the war. You play as 4 different characters, 5 if you include the dog companion, and the story strives to make the player feel empathy from the start. For instance, the game opens by introducing Frenchman Emile and his German son-in-law, Karl. Anticipating war after the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, France starts deporting German citizens. Being ripped away from his wife and child, Karl is one of those deported back to Germany. He is then drafted and forced to fight for the German army. Emile is also drafted, but into the French army, and I was immediately curious as to how their paths would cross. This is one of the first hooks that made me want to keep playing. Could you imagine being forced to fight in a war against your family and loved ones? The other way the game kept me interested was in the design behind the puzzles and collectibles. Most of the game revolves around solving puzzles, in which the player needs a certain item to accomplish something. For example, one of the characters needs to escape from an outpost. In order to get past the guards, the player has to disguise himself by dressing up as a general. To obtain this outfit, the player needs to do a number of tasks. First of all, the player needs to deliver a bottle of wine to the general's quarters. The bottle of wine must be stolen from a group of rowdy soldiers, but to do that, the player has to get close without looking suspicious. This is accomplished by finding a spare soldier's uniform similar to the ones that they are wearing, and you find one hanging up in the laundry. Once the player has the bottle, they can then pass the general's guards and deliver the bottle of wine. Now the player takes control of the dog companion and can sneak into the general's room and knock over the wine, effectively spilling it all over the officer's uniform, which causes him to change clothes. This is when the player can steal the soiled uniform and can now progress past the guards that were blocking the path to the next section of the game. There are some intermediate tasks in there that I didn't mention, but this acts as a general explanation as to how telescoping works in the game. That is, when you do one set of tasks to do another set of tasks in order to eventually accomplish something. While Valiant Hearts is primarily a puzzle game, there are also some neat action sequences, some stealth play mixed in, and one of the best escape sequences I've seen in a game in a long time. One of the more interesting things about the game are the collectibles. The developers didn't put a bunch of arbitrary items for the player to find in order to extend the time it took to finish the game. Instead, the hidden items are added to a diary that tells stories or interesting information about the war. These are usually contextual to what's happening in the game and are accompanied by real photos. Just to give an example, the fact on flamethrowers states that the Germans were first to use flamethrowers in an assault on a previously held position in July of 1915. Although the attack was expected, the use of the weapon came as a surprise and caused a large number of casualties. Its psychological impact was huge, but British troops soon learned to cope with the slow-moving operatives lugging heavy equipment, and they did not adopt the weapons themselves. I don't usually spend much time reading extra lore or codex entries found in most games, but these were so well done, and they helped to ground the experience in the harsh reality of war. Even though I don't usually try to find every little collectible in most games, I found myself completely enamored with them in Valiant Hearts. I think anyone interested in puzzle adventure games or media that focuses on a specific period of history would thoroughly enjoy this game. This game is very reminiscent of the point-and-click adventure games from the 1990s, and if you grew up playing those games and you enjoyed them, then this definitely scratches that itch. However, the developers did a great job incorporating a more current game design approach by including such things as the action gameplay that was previously mentioned. The music and sound design is also fantastic. I think it's safe to say that the music is one of the best characters of the game.